we'll come up in the spring, next year, we'll have everything ready to go. I can't say enough about the VACO staff, what a wonderful job they do, keeping us informed about when we need to call our senators and delegates, when the bill's coming up on the floor for vote, where we can have our voice say and advocate for us, all the counties here. So I'm going to make it short and sweet, and I'm going to move right along. And I'm going to introduce the president-elect of VACO, David Hutchinson, and let him say a few words.
I told him all I was going to do is just stand up and say thank you for being here. But there's a couple of things I do think we need to say. I do thank VACO staff and thank each one for being here. VACO does a lot of things for the localities that a lot of supervisors who are not active never see it. They don't see it. But having said that, staff works really, really hard, particularly during legislative session. But one thing I have learned, and I just want to share this, and I'm down. I have been told that VACO is somewhat like other lobbying organizations when you are approaching elected officials. Now, I don't know this to be a fact, but I have been told to those here that are elected officials, one elected official going and speaking before the General Assembly or before any other elected body is probably worth several non-elected officials. And I said that to say, next year, in addition to supporting our VACO staff, which does a great job, let's take a little more interest as elected officials, assuming we get re-elected this fall, those of us that are running. Let's take a little more interest in showing up, particularly in those things that are important to us. And I think tonight we're going to talk about a lot of things, but one of them is the things that the General Assembly has done or is doing. And, you know, while they champion our cause, I don't think it's as good as us showing up. Mr. Lynch could say different, but I have been told that that's what it is. Again, thanks staff for traveling all the way across, or halfway across the state. We appreciate it, appreciate each one being here, and I appreciate your support in being elected in the VACO. This was 10. We'll campaign a little.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Dean, I did forget something.
Go ahead.
Before Dean gets...
We're going to be informal.
Before we jump right in here, I wanted to start maybe up here and let everybody introduce yourselves before Dean starts.
I'm Bo Blevins with the Virginia Association of Counties.
David Hutch, Carroll County.
Eric Johnson with VACO.
John Smolak, I watch it power.
Gary LaRue, Carroll County.
Brian Reed, Mount Rogers Planning Commission.
Phil McCraw, Carroll County.
Swell Dalton, Wood County.
Kate Charter, VACO staff.
Larry Land, VACO staff.
Laura Blevins, Senator Kane's office.
Randy Johnson, Blaine County.
Karen Haddock, Bland County.
Eric Portway, Bland.
Gary Houseman, Wythe County.
Joe Hale, Wythe County.
Wayne Stevens, Washington County.
Nick Asbury, Blaine County.
Karen Thompson, Pulaski County.
Matt Ogburn, Senator Chapin's office.
Michelle Jenkins, Congressman Griffith's office.
Jonathan Sweet, Grayson County.
Blake Rourke, Delegate Campbell's office.
Catherine Brillhart, Mayor of the City of Bristol, Virginia.
And again, thank all y'all for being here.
Great crowd. Yeah, I'm Dean Lynch with the Virginia Association of Counties, and it's good to be here and good to see so many people sitting at the table at 7 o'clock in the evening. I know you all had a tough day, but it's great to have you come out for this VACO regional meeting. What we're doing, the reason that we're doing regional meetings and are here, is we're trying to get out as VACO staff, trying to get out to jurisdictions that don't normally necessarily see Richmond or see your VACO staff, unless you come to Homestead, unless you come to the annual conference. We really are here because we want to know what your issues are. We can't effectively advocate or lobby for you until you tell us what we should be lobbying. We have a general idea from the people that may come to the Homestead, or if you send us a letter, but there is no substitute other than face-to-face and discussions, face-to-face discussions and conversations. We can really gather what you're interested in and what we should be having on our legislative platform going into our steering committees this the spring, this summer, and this fall. So with that said, we're very glad to come out to this region, to Waco Region 12, Waco Region 12. And so we were in 13 last week before last, and added 13. So we're in 12 now, and I think we go to 10 next in a couple of weeks. So they kind of get it all jumbled up for us. And I think our president, the incoming president's gonna, I know he's gonna be really jumbled up because he was gonna be, try to be in 13, he's gonna be in 12, now he goes to 10, has to come back to 11. But these are all Waco regions. So it's all mixed. But what I like to say is that this is all Southwest Virginia. And it's great for me because I get to come back home. I'm a little selfish. And anytime I can take advantage and come back home to Southwest Virginia, it's always a plus for me. So it's great to be here, and we've got some great speakers. I'm going to turn it up, but before I do that, let me introduce the staff and what our staff does that we have here. We have 5 of us here tonight. Me, Dean Lynch, I'm Deputy Executive Director of Waco, and I specialize in tax and finance issues. And by tax and finance, I mean I'm talking BPOL, machinery and tools, merchants capital, all of those business taxes that everyone hates, and everybody is trying to get rid of. But so that's one of the things that I think a little later I'm going to be talking about cigarette tax and equal taxing authority with the cities. I think we do have somebody from the city here who can also join in our conversation with us. So let me go to Bo Blevins. Bo Blevins, stand up, Bo. Bo is another Southwest Virginia native from Abingdon, and his areas of specialty are transportation and health and human resources. Good to have you with us, Bo.
Thanks.
Eric Johnston. Eric is also from Southwest Virginia, Roanoke area. He guided us all the way through Roanoke and Salem. He grew up in the Salem area. It's good to have him with us. Eric does general government. Most recently, the conflicts ethics reform that we've had, all the stuff that was passed, most recently the General Assembly. He can tell us a little bit about that tonight if we have time. Did I miss anything that you covered, Eric? General government?
Economic development.
Oh, economic development, I'm sorry, economic development. Larry Land, Larry, stand up. Larry has been with Waco a long time. And Larry does environmental issues, and he also does education. So good to have you with us, Larry. Gage Harder in the back of the room. Gage is our media, Director of Communications, our media person. He's the one that helps us get the word out. Does anybody give a chance to read our county connections that we have? Thank Gage. He's the one that does it, the nice glossy stuff. If you look at it on the web, it's really a good job. We do the Capital Contact at least 2 or 3 times a week during the session. Gage is in charge of that and putting that publication out. So you've got your full Waco team here almost, and we're here to listen. We're here to participate in discussions and conversations. And that being said, I want to turn it over to Eric. Since Eric is primarily our economic development person, he's going to introduce our first speaker.
Thanks, Dean. Hello, everybody. We're excited to be here tonight. I did get to show my family home, all my coworkers as I was going down 81, so that was,
You did.
That was a big care.
What was the name of the high school you graduated from? Did I say it was Glen, Florida?
It's Glenford.
Glenford, okay.
But,
I'm from Gay City, that's my accent.
so I'm excited that one of the topics that this region asked us to talk about was economic development. That's the topic that I cover at Waco. Economic development workforce. I can tell you within our Waco policy area, this region has been on our steering committees, spoken at our conferences, and been a leader in asking Waco to do a lot more to work on the different tools and resources that the counties need on economic development, workforce development. I know just from our dinner conversation before this meeting, we talked for about an hour and a half about workforce issues. So it's an issue near and dear to many people's hearts. We have an excellent speaker. I'm going to introduce you in a second and thank Carroll County for recommending. But before we get into that, I just wanted to do a couple highlights about some of the work during the session on economic development. Broadband funding was a big issue. We're going to be able to send out a release tomorrow from the Department of Housing and Community Development. There's about $500,000 in broadband planning grants that localities will be eligible for that are going to actually be coming out really quickly at the end of May here. That's a deal that the governor made with the legislature to get some money out at the end of this fiscal year. So that's one of our big efforts on economic development is actually having the broadband infrastructure. The other piece that I know a lot of people in the room worked on was workforce investment boards, workforce development. There was a bill that went through this last session supported by the governor, and Senator Ruff and Delegate Byron, two of the chief Republican leads on workforce development issues. There were some challenges in that for counties, some excellent things to improve the focus on making sure the state system does a better job of meeting business needs, but there's also some more stringent requirements on what we can use in terms of our workforce investment boards, more rigidness, less flexibility on what counts as training in there. And that's something Baco has been working on with the WIBs, that we're going to have to continue to see how that problem works itself out and see if we can help address that next session. But one of the main things we wanted to also bring across, many of you all are on our steering committees. We have 7 policy steering committees at Baco, composed of county staff and elected officials that tell us what our advocacy, what our lobbying agenda is going to be. And many of you are on that. If you're not, I encourage you all to get on. Economic development planning is just one. Dean mentioned the different areas that you have all your lobbyists in the room. They cover those topics and work on steering committees. Even if you can't always make the Richmond or the Homestead for our annual conference, we have conference calls. And our feedback with you and with your legislators is like our president-elect said, pretty much the key to our lobbying efforts. So any ways that we can get you all plugged in and guide us in that is helpful to all the counties. We'll get into discussion more on economic development and the conflicts issue later, but right now I just want to introduce our speaker, because he's done a great job of teaming up some of he and his staff looking at the economic and workforce development issues in the region. And he's not the workforce guy, he's coming from industry. John Smolak is the Economic and Business Development Director at Appalachian Power. He's based in Roanoke, but oversees economic development efforts across the company's 3-state service territory. He was recently president and CEO of Franklin Southeastern Economic Development, where he served for 7 years. And prior to that, he was employed by American Electric Power for 18 years as a manager of economic development in Kentucky and West Virginia. He's also worked in other key economic development marketing positions. He's held several management and leadership positions with West Virginia Development Office for the state of West Virginia, so has some good experience working in state government as well. And he's a graduate of Kent State University and the Economic Development Institute at the University of Oklahoma. But I think the most important thing is he gets the importance of local government and counties. He's here, he's worked with some of you all in the region, and he's going to be a part of teeing up our conversation on economic and workforce development. Mr. Smolak, we're glad you're here, and we'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, great, thanks. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Eric. Well, what I hope to do tonight is give you some thoughts and ideas so you stimulate some conversation. Hopefully there'll be a few nuggets in there that will bring about some good dialogue and conversation. One of the things that came in when I came in the room, Slell Dalton, the first thing out of Slell's mind was, is APCO going to lower their rates? And I said, well, not tonight. I won't be talking about that. But the good thing that happened in this past legislative session was that both Dominion Power and Appalachian Power, who are 2 large investor-owned utilities that are in Virginia, had a bill passed that's going to freeze rates for quite a few years. And so our base rates, now make sure you understand this, our base rates are going to be frozen for APCO for 6 years, and for Dominion, I think they've run up to 10 years, I believe, and they're part of the bill. So that's a good thing for Virginia, and so I wanted to kind of let you know that. There'll still be some rate adjustments based on investments we make in our transmission grid system and distribution system, and if we do some generation, like we're doing at Clinch River, converting the Clinch River plant in Russell County to the natural gas. So there'll still be some rate adjustment clauses that'll be appearing on everybody's bill, but that's just the nature of our business. When we make capital improvements, we do expect to get some, return on our investment. So, well, let's talk about economic development tonight, and wanted to kind of start with that. And just to set the stage, I'm probably preaching to somewhat of the choir, but let's just set the stage of what site location factors in today's world companies and businesses are looking at. And of course, we go down the list of obviously great product that we need to have in business parks and land, the scale and the skills of your labor market, which we can talk about a little bit later, and workforce, the scale of your economic and socioeconomic characteristics, infrastructure. You've got to have everything in place, from all the utilities, the roads, intermodal terminals, access and connections, access to markets, so your customers and your clients and your businesses can get their product in and get equipment in and product out. Business support services and climate job training, which we'll talk about with workforce a little bit. The regulatory climate of the area and your transport services, how your customers get your product in and get things out. Total cost of doing business, competitive labor, utilities, infrastructure, and taxes. And of course, as always, quality of life enters into that, especially with schools and housing. When you're trying to recruit somebody or have an expansion of an existing company, schools and housing become very important. A top of mind question at the C-level executive considering any new or extended location is, well, is this location going to meet my current needs that I have right now, and will this region meet my long-term needs to sustain and grow my company? And we're talking beyond, long-term being 10 to 15 to 20 years when we take a look at that. 30 years ago, the answer to that question was that skip ahead. Yeah. I'm okay. 30 years ago, the answer to that question was land, labor, and capital. That's basically what a lot of big companies needed 30 years ago to make things work. But in today's world, it's a little bit different. And that's where you get into a lot of things like your workforce talent. I will tell you that probably every company I work with that is looking at Virginia or any area within APCO's area, that is their number one question. Where's my talent coming from? How old are they? How skilled are they? What kind of training programs do you have? That is the number one question they ask. They expect you to have a good site. They expect you to have your utilities in place. They expect a lot of things to be there. But when it comes to workforce, you've got to convince them that you've got the workforce talent pool. Also, access to technology. They want to be near research and development facilities, be it a university or private, good training facilities, tech companies in the region that they can rely on to meet their needs. Another important one is global supply chain and logistics. So many companies now export their products out to all over the world. So you've got to have connections to get their product out. And it was mentioned tonight, broadband. That is becoming another huge issue that they want to talk about all the time. Making sure that they can do their financial transactions, communicate with their customers overseas. If you don't have that, you're not going to be competitive in today's market. What I'd like to do is get into kind of I'm not sure what level it is, be it 25,000 feet or 30,000 feet, but take a look at the region that we're talking about today, and maybe some of these things will set the stage for some conversation. What I did is kind of give an overview of the region itself, and kind of look at the jobs by county, as you can see there. An interesting thing I thought we turned up in some of our research was education completions. And that is all higher ed, community college, and or certificates that are issued by educational institutions within this region. And I thought that was a pretty good number. That's a 2013 number, but I still thought that was a pretty good number for a fairly rural area that you're in. A little bit about, a gross regional product, and of course the imports and exports. We still have a little bit of a deficit there. We obviously still import a little bit more than we do export out of this region. Just trying to give you an idea of kind of an overview. Population trends, maybe not so good. Population trends for this region in particular is pretty flat for the next 10 years. State's going to grow about 5%, and the nation as a whole is predicted to grow about 4%. So challenge you have to kind of look at your population, because your population is also aging. We'll get into that a little bit as well. So when it comes to population trends, it's something to think about. Not much of a change there in population growth for this specific 7 counties. What I asked them to do is also look at your manufacturing workers and population by age. And there's about 16,000 manufacturing workers within this area, roughly. And the population of your workforce that's actually in the workforce today is that you have about 153,000 people in your workforce today. And that's sort of the demographic age breakdown. As you can see, a good deal in the 55 to 64, a pretty hefty percentage, 20%. Got some small percentages at the other end. And probably about 30 years ago, you started looking at trends in the U.S. and everywhere in general. You had the big pyramid like this, and the older people were at top and all the young people were at the bottom. Those were all the boomers, me included, in that boomer range. If you look at that triangle, looks like now it's no longer a triangle. It's basically a rectangle, a big skyscraper that goes straight up, straight down, where you've got a lot more at the top and not a whole lot more at the bottom. So it's going to be a challenge for everybody, no matter what part of rural or urban, it's still going to be a challenge when it comes to your population, your makeup. And please ask any questions as you're moving along here, if there's anything you want to talk about further when I have these up here. So just kind of give you a little bit of idea about that. So it relates back to workforce. Regional job trends for the next 10 years, everybody's on an upswing, including this region. The big gap is between the state and the nation, growing at a percentage of about 27%. And this region, this particular 7 counties we're in today, is at about 12%. So there's a gap. There's about a 15% gap in job growth trends in this area. So something to think about. Even though it's going up, it's not going up as quickly as the state trend is projected to go in the next 10 years. So good things. Manufacturing leads your workforce, your largest employment sector, with government, number 2, and then retail trade and on down the way. There's several other good categories there, but manufacturing still leads your way in that. And that's a 2014 number right there that we came up with. And so that's still a good thing. That manufacturing is still very positive in the region. This kind of shows a little bit about kind of the same thing in a different way. We broke down the major manufacturing sectors in different areas, and there's only 3 that are kind of negative or no growth, and that happens to be, if I recall, the machinery manufacturing, beverage and tobacco products, and plastics and rubber is kind of at a 0. But all the other sectors are very positive, and the big purple one is transportation manufacturing. So it has the highest potential for growth that we see it in the projections that we took a look at through our research. And again, here's sort of another way to look at it, top industries of tomorrow. You've got roughly a 10% growth rate in the transportation equipment sector, and another good increase is your electrical equipment manufacturing. It's predicted to go about a 24% growth. So out of those, again, those that are up there, and we may have missed a few, but most of the major sectors in here. 3 of them are, either zero growth or a negative growth, but all the rest are positive, which is good. It's good. But it's just also to show you, you're gonna need some workforce to fill those positions. This is a little bit about commuting patterns. What's in the big green circle is everybody that works and lives within your region. You have about 46,000 people roughly that live and work here. You've got some out commuting, the 30,474. It's people that live in your region but obviously work somewhere else. And there are 22,000 roughly that come into your region that don't live here. So that kind of tells you a little bit about some of the patterns and that we've been able to discover through some research with these particular 7 counties that we're in. So kind of gives you an idea that there's probably a lot of opportunity to capture some people in that 30,000 number to both live and work in your region. Obviously, they have community. I wanted to just give you kind of a couple examples of what a location means to an area. And I'm not sure, is anybody here from Smith County tonight? Not sure, okay. Still use it because it's an announcement that was made last year. Mayville Engineering, MEC, located an expansion facility in Smith County. And as you can see, as a result of that, the multiplier that this group that we use looks at, the change in earnings is pretty significant, about $13 million. The overall increase in change in jobs, besides the 160 that was created with that location, is at 225. And the average earnings per job is about $58,000, which is pretty significant. So down here you have initial, direct, indirect, and induced. And basically initial is what the company created. The direct and indirect are basically supply chain type job increases that are both first tier and second tier supply chain folks that work with MEC on a lot of different things. And the induced is basically your retail or your government and or your services that are created as a result of those jobs coming to that area. So it kind of gives you kind of a good picture of what the multiplier is. And Jonathan Sweet's here, so we got a little example of your work over there. In Galax and what's going on in that area. We had 30 new jobs created by Guarding Industries, and sort of the same, a pretty hefty multiplier in the job change, 1.4 or so, and so out of the 30, they're going to create another 14 jobs probably in that region as a result of that investment that was made. Again, pretty nice earnings, 46,000 average for all 44 jobs that would be created. And so it kind of gives you an idea of how important it is to get some new investments and some new jobs and getting your existing companies to expand. The multiplier effect, reaches out pretty far. And so something that everybody should keep in mind, and because it also not only affects the kind of workforce that this company would be employing, but it also affects retail, it affects business services, and affects other areas that workforce needs are going to be looked at. So, and I think really, in a way, that kind of concludes everything for my remarks. So I hope that kind of stimulated a little bit, kind of give you some ideas about how important it is to look at your talent pool. Again, I can't stress enough, it seems to be the number one question that every company has asked about when considering an area. And so one of the things with your prospect response teams that each of the counties, I hope, have when you gather your community leaders to meet with them is you have somebody there that can speak directly to your talent pool. your workforce is like, where they get trained, and, you know, what kind of skills they have. And again, the big thing in the next 10 years is gonna be the shift of population growth, the demographic change we're gonna see. And so you're gonna have a lot of young people that may or may not want to be here. And if you can't provide the kind of jobs they're looking for, then you're gonna have some real challenges ahead. But one of the things a lot of communities have done is look at ways that, as a region or a county, or however you wanna look at it, is to try to bring some people back to the left. And generally, it's those that are maybe 8 or 10 years out that have left the area to find other pursuits. So they're probably in the 28 years old, 32 years old, is to try to find a way, you know, to inventory where they are, where they've gone, what are they doing, what kind of jobs do they have now, what would be good for them to bring back. Because I think I came up from a small community, and I know that a lot of people, after they've been away a while, they want to come back. So there's got to be, you know, something inherent in what you're trying to do to look at how you can bring some people back to your community as well, besides train what you have. And there's probably a lot of good skill sets out there that for people that want to come back to your community. A good example I was given was, one county uses this at every class reunion at their major high school. And they get a list of all the people, and they start finding out where they live, get their address, get their emails, finding out, doing a little survey, finding out what they're about, what are they doing? You know, do you want to come back? And a lot of them said, yeah, I can come back. So, you know, it's kind of an interesting thought to think about when it comes down to how you get that workforce, you know, stabilized, because I think it's going to be a big change in the next 10 years.
John, let me ask you a question. We had the 40 whatever thousand that's here, lives here, works here. We have the exports, the 30-some thousand, I think, that goes out. And then we have the import. Do you have any idea of what the breakdown in types of jobs that we're exporting as opposed maybe to what we're importing? Is it trade skills?
I could find out, like I said, this is sort of a, yeah, I'm not sure if the research folks that we use before this can get that, but I can certainly ask that question, and see what that looks like, yeah. But that's a good question, yeah, what?
I mean, I think all the counties are probably that are represented are much like Carroll. We export, it seems, are probably best and brightest for that reason that there's not sustainable wages maybe. And so they can go to school or to do some other things. And it'd be interesting to know of that number that are going, why they're going. Is it because of a certain training or something of that nature?
Yeah, but don't forget those are on that chart that I had up there. Those 30,000 that are, they do live here.
Yes, but they're going somewhere else.
But they are going somewhere else. Yeah.
But it's just as easy for them to decide to reside where they work in some cases.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you actually lose that.
Sorry, Gary Hanson from Wythe County. In one of your earlier slides, you had, I think it was scale and quality of employment pool. By scale, what did you mean by that? Was that number?
Numbers, yes. The scale, you know, how big of a pool of labor is there in the market from which they could draw from, be it, and it gets into, you know, what colleges and universities you may have within your area, how are they being trained, that talent pool, as well as your existing workforce that may be underemployed in many respects, you know. They may look at that retail sector and say, wow, you guys got a lot of retail, but I bet those are a lot of people that, you know, probably would like to do something else besides
that attractive or not attractive to, or does it matter to manufacturers company?
I'm not sure anymore that if you have a high unemployment rate, that matters more to them or not. I think they're really looking at some of your existing industries in the area, what kind of talent pool is there, I'm not sure that total unemployment really says much to them anymore.
Okay.
They're really looking at what are those existing people doing? How are they trained? What kind of industries are here? What kind of training can they get in the area? And so by scale, I think you're looking at some numbers, and it probably would be a little bit advantageous to have some more unemployed, but those numbers kind of come and go. People file for unemployment and they kind of go off unemployment, or they leave the area, and it's kind of hard to use that as a real indicator of things sometimes. So.
And I have one last question, is in the total population, and then the total population that had a higher ed degree, and I think that you said community college or training or anything beyond that.
And those are or certificates of,
Right.
They get a certificate in welding, or they get a certificate in some kind of computer science.
Did I see the numbers wrong? Was it 1% or was it, I think it's a couple over. Right back one. 202,000 population on 2,700.
Yeah, in 2013, the number we were able to get was as far as education completions, meaning some type of certificate, degree, be it a 4-year degree, be it a 2-year degree, or some type of certificate at a community college of some kind. And that's how many were given out in 2013 for those. Yeah. It's not high school. Don't.
Right, I understand that.
Don't
Anything
think
beyond.
high school. It's all higher ed.
Right, anything beyond, I understand.
Quick question. Underemployment is a big selling point now versus unemployment.
Yeah.
Does your data show the underemployment?
Didn't take a look at that, but I could try to see. But that's, a lot of that has to be done somewhat locally or regionally. I mean, from my county, but as far as surveying some of those that are underemployed and finding out what kind of skill sets they have. It's almost like trying to get somebody to come back.
Some of it's anecdotal, but
Yeah.
if you look at where population's going and the out-migration of jobs, if that was reversed, we had an in-migration of jobs, importing workers, perhaps our population growth might have an opportunity for greater change. And if we track their underemployment, particularly in those jobs going out of the community, that's latent capacity and opportunity for more gainful employment within the region. And anecdotally, we could identify some of that, maybe that would at least give us a selling point and really optimism.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that were pointed out. I'm going to see if our research group can kind of take a look at some things and see how far we can drill down. Yeah. On some of these things. Yeah, I made note of question and your thoughts on that. Yes.
I saw that number that you had up on exports, and I think it was, if I read the number right, I think it was 10 billion.
Yeah.
And I was just curious if you knew again what percentage of that was in agricultural products. I think you had a slide that did make some reference to that. But
When it came to exports, we probably again have to, maybe drill down on that a little bit to find out how much of that is agricultural and I don't know. But again, I didn't want to get too far in the weeds tonight, but I wanted to kind of give an overview and maybe stimulate some things. But I can't emphasize enough of the number one question that we're asked anymore is talent pool and workforce. Yes, sir.
I have a question on that. Do you think that the industries that we have in the region if they would come forward to the high schools and the trade schools, community colleges, and educate the young people on what they need in that workforce, to give them an idea of what maybe they could go geared toward to get the talent that we're looking for, would that be another side of that to work at?
Well, there's no doubt that there's got to be more communication between the businesses that you have here and your community college system, for sure, but also any other, four-year degree as well. But definitely the community college system and any other training facilities that are available, businesses have to be engaged. They've got to tell their story. But it's up to the educators somewhat to draw them in. You've got to, it's a two-way street.
Yes, sir.
So you both have to be willing to talk to each other. You both have to be willing to be honest about what you need as an employer and what we can provide as an educational institution, and how I as an educator can change my curriculum to match with my business needs. So in my thinking too, the community college system has to be much more flexible. It has to be able to move quicker on their feet and be able to shift money more quickly, and have multi-talented instructional staff that can do a lot of different things, because the needs of business do change, and education has to change just as quickly as maybe industry faces at times on how they change their skill sets, especially when it comes to technology and how industry is employing less because of technology as well. So.
I would like to mention that, excuse me, that the chancellor of the community colleges has been having regional meetings, and he just had one in New River Valley last week with that very topic. And it was business leaders and people that was in manufacturing, trying to connect with the community college and see how, number one, the community colleges want to increase their enrollment, of course.
Sure.
But the best way to do that is to match with the industry. That's their goal this year.
Right. Good. Glad to hear that. It needs to be done, and quickly. Quickly, yeah. So there could be a lot of, there's probably a lot of programs within some of the community colleges that may not be creating the kind of people that are going to be staying here. And so you've got to start matching up what some of these employers, where they're thinking their company is going, and the kind of skill sets they're going to need 5 and 10 years from now. And they probably couldn't tell you a lot of that. So the community college system has to react to that and react pretty quickly.
It doesn't hurt for business leaders to be on college boards either.
No, that's true. Very good.
John, could your staff look at this job education completions and tell us how many of those were retrainings through the Workforce Investment Board to see exactly what kind of bang for the buck the Workforce Investment Board has given us, that retraining? And I guess my personal opinion is the day you get a job, you should start training for further education, train for your next job, because the way industries, I think you said 15 to 20 years is their limit. So you're going to be there for this period of time. You better be prepared for that next job. And I think a lot of times that's where we fall short in convincing everybody that education is a long lifetime experience, not a one-time event.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll see what we can do is drilling down on some of these things. I know about the exports, and we'll talk a little bit about the education completion, see how that looks. Obviously, they got the gross numbers, so they pulled it from somewhere. So I'll see what kind of a breakdown we can get on some of that. Okay, very good.
Other questions for John?
No, I'd like to add one thing to what you said, John. Workforce investment area too, and I see a lot of the consortium board members here today. About maybe a little over 2 years ago, we actually commissioned a study that we worked with Virginia Tech on skills gap analysis, and it was very in-depth. I know several of the localities have used it. I know planning districts have used it. What it does is it just confirms what you said about the gaps that we have in our skills as opposed to what is needed by business. And it doesn't close up a whole lot. The analysis indicates that there's gonna be a skills gap. And the part is, oftentimes, we truly don't know what industry needs, what business needs. It's difficult to get them to give feedback, because they're busy working, they're busy earning money, a living, and running a business. But the skills gap indicated a lot of those, and I think Mount Rogers has used it, I think Jonathan, Eric, I think a lot of the localities has used that. And we still have that ability to draw data from that for anybody that's within the workforce investment area too. But I would just say that analysis was pretty in-depth, and it went across a myriad of occupations. But it showed almost in most of the manufacturing, those things. There is a gap, and it's difficult to figure out how to do that training. John, you said it, it's difficult to get the community college sometimes to react quick enough to a specific need. And I guess welding has been used 100 times by 100 localities, because that's something that's needed. And in Carroll County, we had an employer that needed welders really bad, and couldn't get training for them to get them certified. And that's kind of what that analysis shows. So if any of the localities are here, you need a question, you can call Marty at the Workforce Investment, and she'll either get it or make sure you get that information. But I think it's very useful.
The other thing relative to the communication between business and the training sources that you have, be it community college or whatever other training source, would be there, private or whatever, is, I know with our company, we've got a lot of boomers. And within the next 5 to 6 years, there's gonna be a lot of guys and gals retiring in our company. I know that. And we're really concerned about backfilling as they leave. And one of the things that we really have to do is have a greater dialogue with the skill sets that we expect that's going to be walking out that door. And there's some tremendously experienced linemen, technicians, engineering people that are going to be leaving. And we've got to find a way to backfill when a whole bunch of them in the next 5 to 7, 8 years are going to be saying, I've got my pension, I've got my retirement, I'm going to Florida. So, so we got to react to that too. Got to react to that. I'm sure a lot of other employers probably are facing that same scenario. I mean, you saw the 20% up there that was in that 55 to 64 range. That's a pretty big number. And so anyway, also something to think about. So.
Just piggyback on what Dave was just mentioning, the skills gap analysis. I think that we are gonna have that posted on our VACO website. We had a presentation on that a couple of weeks ago. We were actually in Region 13. So we are gonna try to get that posted up. It's about a 90-page or document. It's a big, thick document, and it's a lot of stuff in there. So we'll try to get that posted up on our website. If you wanna go to our website, take a look at it anyway. But, thank you for being here. Thank you, John. Great job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
A couple people that I really forgot to thank, get away from this light here, this hit me right in the eye. A couple people I forgot to thank. Matt Rogers, thank you for helping host this. And I also want to thank Nationwide, Selma, our sponsor, Nationwide Retirement Solutions. If you look in the back of the room and you get hungry, we have some cookies back there, we have more snacks, and we also have some water. Thanks to Nationwide for bringing the snacks.
I'd like to say a few things if I could, just thank everybody for coming. And just tell some folks some of the things that we're doing at the Planning District Commission. One of the points on the slide was quality of life, and we're currently working with Friends of Southwest Virginia and the Department of Housing and Community Development doing a regional branding campaign for Southwest Virginia, and many of you are involved in it. We're also working on a outdoor recreation economic restructuring plan for all the counties and towns that surround the Mount Rogers recreation area, which help boost quality of life. We also are working on entrepreneur challenges. We're doing 3 of them within our region: Washington, Smith,
rural retreat in Wythe County and Grayson County and Independence. And Eric, we're coming to you next. I'm gonna get another $20,000 from BTC to expand that. But now that David is gonna be the president of VACO,
You're not counting that, 2 elections.
one of the things that I think VACO can help, especially in our region, if you'll ask me, I'm sorry you're not part of our district, but one of the things for planning districts 1, 2, and 3 is the water wastewater program, which has really been beneficial to our localities for water and sewer infrastructure. And this last year, it was frozen. Back in July, those funds were, and we just regained access in January. And as of today, I think this morning, our PDC wrote checks for close to, in total, $200,000 to some of our localities. The 2015 fund got cut by about $100,000, I guess, more than that, 178,000, I think. And
For FY16?
right, and we usually fund about 13 to 14 technical assistants and actual construction implementation projects. So that's something I think that VACO could help us with the legislators on the line.
May I ask, are these federal funds? Is this the
State,
Okay,
general
I'm
assistance.
just wondering if you're talking about the state revolving fund, which is money, are these loans or are these grants?
This is 100% grant,
Okay.
and it's only for planning districts 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, I
It's
see.
called Southwest Virginia
Okay, thank
Water
you.
and Wastewater Construction Fund.
We're taking notice. So you'd like for VACO to include it in our legislative
Yeah,
platform?
I think that would do that, because just about every county in our district's benefited from that in one way or another, right? Saline, you guys have, Bland, Grayson, Carroll, yeah, and all the towns, I think.
And you jumped right in there with the first legislative issue.
That's because I have to go,
That's
but
okay.
I have to leave town in the morning.
It was the job.
That's it. Anybody have any questions for me as far as the PDC?
Thank you for
Thank you,
helping
guys.
these folks.
All right.
Are you leaving?
Yes, I need to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Let me acknowledge Selman from Nationwide, real quick,
Yes.
Nationwide Retirement.
Compliments of Nationwide, just quietly, I want to hand out some ink pens for y'all, and it's always good to have another pen to write with. If you take one and pass it down, I'm going to quietly get out the way here real soon.
And let me just mention a little bit about Nationwide Retirement Solutions. They are a partner with VACO in delivering 457, offering 457 financial retirement for your employees. So you'll occasionally see letters from us, information from us on our website, and we really enjoy the partnership that we do have with Nationwide.
Yes, sir.
Take an ink pen and take a cookie and take some water. Thank you, Selma.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Let me now, the next thing on the agenda is, we have several legislators and congressmen here. Their staffs are here, so I'm gonna take just a minute and recognize Michelle Jenkins. Michelle with Congressman Morgan Griffith. What do you want to tell the group anything? It's an election year.
I'll make me go first, if that's okay.
My
pleasure to be here.
Said Nationwide.
Just want to say, I think these are great, and thank y'all for doing them. I was at the one in Wythe County a couple weeks ago. I think it's very productive, not only for, for us to hear what you all think, but also for you all to get together. And I know you do it a lot, but this is probably a good atmosphere to do it in. But just remember, even though a lot of the issues you're talking about tonight are state issues and not under our federal jurisdiction, but we do a lot of things that I know directly affect what the state does. So always keep us in mind when you have projects and issues that come up. We're here to help, even if it's not ours. We'll work to hopefully find you somebody that can take care of it. So we're here to help. And if you need me, let me know.
Tell the congressman we missed him, but thank you for being here.
He is in DC.
It's always good to see you.
So I appreciate that.
All right, Laura Blevins. I think you're here with Senator King.
Yes, and anything that you have, send it our way, and if we can't help you, we'll send it to Michelle.
That's a good working relationship.
We do have a good working relationship, and there are a lot of projects in Southwest Virginia that our bosses work together on. So it's always good when there's a little bipartisanship going on. And we also have some great partners with our state legislators as well. Thank you for the invite.
Matt Arbor, Senator Chafin's office.
Thank you all for having us, and thank you all for gathering here. It's great to see everyone here trying to work for the same cause. I mean, we've had a lot of diverse issues in Southwest Virginia, a lot of workforce issues. We need to create some more jobs around here, and any way we can do to help, just please let us know. And it's great to see everyone here and hear what y'all need and what we need to be doing to be as responsive as possible.
I gotta say that it was a pleasure working with Matt and with Senator Chafin this year. We had a lot of issues, and VACO staff were at Senator Chafin's office a lot this year, and we got a warm welcome all the time. Thank you. All right, and Blake with Delegate Campbell's office.
Great.
I didn't get your last name, Blake. Rourke.
Yes, sir.
All right, good to have you with us.
It's great to be here. Just want to echo Matt's thoughts. It's great for everyone to be together, work for the same cause, and anything anyone needs, feel free to call. Gary, it's lovely, but our phones are always on. Thanks for having us.
And for those of you who have not been to Delegate Campbell's office, it's kind of interesting when you walk in his office. He's got all these football helmets of all his high schools that are in his district. So it's always kind of an interesting thing to look at. So, did I miss anyone? Did I miss any legislators or?
Dean, since they're offering, we had a little flood event here in Wythe County this past week. I was just notified before I came in here that VDOT has lost a bridge in Wythe County. So there's, when VDOT calls and said they need some emergency money, fix a bunch of Route 52 that washed out and closed with a landslide, and a bridge and some other things. We appreciate all the help they give us.
All right, I guess the next thing on the agenda is for you all, it's time for you all to talk and tell us what are your issues that you'd like to see us looking at, diving into. We've been taking copious notes, and I think that, Eric, I think we've already taken some notes on economic development, workforce issues that were probably addressed to John, that I think maybe that we could do some additional research on and try to get this information back to you also, that you all identified. But we are taking notes. We have several issues that we think are going to be hot issues going forward into next year. As always, and as far as what I look at is tax and finance, always going to be an attack on the business taxes that you levy and collect. The manufacturing community, the businesses are always going to try to go to the General Assembly and try to get those taxes done away with. They don't want you raising their revenue in your localities. So they'd like for the state to step in, like for the legislators to step in and either abolish or restrict that authority that you have to collect those taxes. But this past year, we also heard that there were some localities that wanted to expand their authority. They want to create a cigarette tax. They'd like to be able to levy and collect for a cigarette tax. Some localities would like to do a mills tax without referendum. All that basically is saying that they like to levy and collect taxes just like cities do. And we have one city that's with us here in the city of Bristol. That we'd like to have the same power that they do. Lots of reasons in the past for counties and cities to be different. One deals to do with police funding, 599 funding. Historically, cities were given police funding in lieu of annexation, to do away with annexation, and it was viewed that those 599 funds, the cities needed to collect additional revenue to support police departments. Well, now we are supporting police departments. At least 7 or 8 jurisdictions throughout the state support police departments, and we are also supplementing our sheriff's departments and our jails, which we didn't do 20 years ago. We are also providing additional assistance for K-12 public education, for health and human services. We didn't do that years ago. Whereas cities, historically, it was thought that cities did that, and why they needed to collect additional taxes and do the mills tax, put additional sales sales tax for their businesses within their city. And I think that was some of the historical reasons that there has been a difference in taxation between the cities and counties. We at VACO have always had the plank in our platform that we wanted to equalize that taxing authority. I've heard from Pulaski County, and I think maybe from Wythe County, that y'all would like the authority to implement a cigarette tax or determine what kind of tax you would like to do without referendum. And so I kind of throw that out as a precursor to what we're going to be talking about tonight, and throw it out there as what is this group, what are you all looking at in your localities? Are you still looking at equal taxation? Or are you looking at economic development? Are you looking at water quality issues? Or are you looking at health and human service issues? We need to know exactly what we should be lobbying for on your behalf. Make no mistake, we are your lobbyists in Richmond, and we work for you. So you got to tell us what to do sometimes, and give us some guidance. And so that's why I'm throwing it out to you all for your all's assistance right now. So give you a chance to talk a little bit. I'm going to start off with Carroll County, our president. Tell us a little bit what Carroll's looking at, or maybe Gary or Dave, either one. Tell us. I know it's early. I know it's early in the session. Know that we came off before we begin, counties came off we had a very good year this year in General Assembly. The legislature was very kind to us. They did away with the ugly local aid to the state that was taxing us $30 million a year in FY15. They did away with that for FY16, so we don't have to do that. They also gave us additional money for state-supported local employees' salaries, a 2% pay raise, and a 1.5% pay raise for school teachers this year. Those are all good things. But don't forget, years and years, how we have had declining revenue coming to local government and all these programs in the past. So we're doing a lot of supplementing at the local level, and we need your assistance on telling us what we need to be lobbying for going forward. So start off with Carol. Give us.
I would just say a couple of things, and I would defer to Mr. McCraw, the chairman. Yes, but as always, the ability to raise meals and lodging taxes without, or even with a referendum in some cases, is something that I think we need. The ability to create additional revenue streams, whatever they are things that's difficult for localities under the constraints that we have within the rules of being really a little state. You can't do those things, and that's just one of them. Increases that we've had to absorb in some of the aid back to the state on different things. I'm not so sure, and I want to ask Mr. McCraw, the chairman, because he was on the budget committee, but I know there were things that we did this year to make our budget work that we would like to have seen revenue from the state to have helped those things in a lot of cases. So,
yeah, unfunded mandates are killing everybody. And I know that's beating the dead horse to death, because that's been the deal for a long time. It continues to seemingly get worse. We do need other revenue streams. I think it would be great if counties had the authority to tax that cities do. How far away are we from that?
I tell you, the legislators that represent your area told me this past year that this last year was not the year to do it. It was an election year.
Yeah.
And while it's not raising the tax, asking for a tax increase, they all have to run. All the delegates are running this year, senators, and I think that they didn't want to see that legislation in election. So if it's going to be done, and there's going to be a push for it, this next year's the year to do it. I don't know. I think we had some Delegate Campbell. I talked to him several times, and he was very understanding. Several other delegates that I've talked to have been very understanding about giving localities this authority and saying that we need to, that they agree that we need to have the same taxing authorities as cities. But again, that's only this region. I mean, that's, you gotta sell 99 other delegates.
Yeah.
And 40 other senators.
Well, election years are not good years to go up on taxes. We all know that. You know, all of the elected officials in here realize that. And, you know, Carroll used to have six supervisors elected every 4 years. Now we're on staggered terms. So 3 of us have to worry about an election every other year. So, you know, if the state gave us the authority to do this, it would have to be in an off-year election, and I'm not sure from a political standpoint that, you know, it wouldn't be better if it was something that had to go to a referendum.
Part of what I've also been told from some delegates that are a little north of here is that their constituency, that they feel that they listen to, do not want local governments or supervisors to have that authority to choose what tax they want to implement without referendum. They feel that these delegates, some delegates, feel it's their obligation to act as the buffer to keep boards of supervisors from just implementing a mills tax without referendum.
And I can understand why people feel like that.
So I mean, that's what we, I mean, in reality, that's what we run up against. So, you know, can this happen? Can this happen on its own? My question is cigarette tax. Look at the cigarette tax, for one thing. A lot of localities want to implement a cigarette tax. Strategically, you know, I think it sounds good, but can it actually be done as a standalone, or does it really need to be part of a bigger income tax reform, some kind of tax reform process? You're going to have people on both sides jumping in there and weighing in, and so I don't know.
If I could just interject, this past assembly year,
Blaine County.
We probably were the last county to jump on board as far as the change in the transit obsolete tax code, where we come in and we can charge an extra 3% for tourism-based endeavors. It barely got out of the house because there were delegates that ran on the platform they would never vote for tax increase. Delegates that represent counties that have that ability voted against it, so we barely got out of the house. Thanks to Senator Chafin, we got through the Senate very well. I guess on our end, we just like to be equal with everybody, and not have to go through this where every locality has to ask permission. If Fairfax County can do it, then how come Lane County can do it? If Fairfax can have a cigarette tax, then why can't Wythe County make that decision? And I think that's the biggest point on the locality side is the way the General Assembly is set up right now. We all have to come as individual localities and ask for permission, whereas if there was something equal just done for all of us that says this is how counties are treated, then I think that would be a whole lot easier. And that might be that swapping tax reform issue that's taken a look at.
Historically, the TOT, the transient occupancy tax that Lane County puts in, that Wythe County puts in, or you want to do an increase or do a TOT tax, that has historically been no-brainer and has been approved by localities. Only the last 2 years have we started seeing county, those requests denied.
Yeah.
And I think, and the reason those are denied is because it comes through House Finance. And House Finance is looking at it with a fine-tooth comb. We're not looking to increase, like you said, increase anything on taxes, especially in an election year, running on a platform of denying any kind of increase. So, too lucky.
I can speak to the other side of it as John Q. citizen and taxpayer. I own a retail business a mile from the Virginia-North Carolina state line. We have a cheaper cigarette tax in North Carolina. We have a cheaper gas tax in North Carolina. So I do for a living, a tax increase would be a horrible thing. So I can speak to both sides of the issue.
But it should be still left up to the counties to make that decision. I mean, we have just as much infrastructure as far as sewer, water, trash collecting as the towns and cities do.
I agree.
And the restraints that the state puts on us, and, you know, the school system wants more and more money every year, and you're turning around putting it back on the landowners, the property owners, of the county to pay for all of that. And I just don't think it should be up to us, you know, to think of every way possible to raise revenue without putting it back totally on the burden.
I agree with what Tim's saying. If it came to a vote for our board to whether I would want to vote for it or not, I honestly don't know. But I think the county don't have that choice. It's the cities that can.
So do I have agreement that you all are going to all support Delegate Campbell and Senator Chafin when they introduce this legislation next year? Everybody gonna come up and support them? Just ask.
I think we really need two bills. You need one for equal opportunity to tax as towns and cities, but y'all also introduce a bill for cigarette taxes. We're not isolated here. You got the same problem in York County and any of those counties that border the high density areas where they're charging more tax. And all the counties, whether they're tidewater or here, have the same problem. We don't have enough revenue to meet the request. And I think there could be support at the south side and in tidewater with an initiative for cigarette tax.
Thank you, and I also, I think that may be a strategy that we can think about. Also, we have to understand that the whole cigarettes, you know, have gotten a lot of attention because cigarettes are bought in Virginia and taken and sold in New York. And so I mean, I think that whole thing, I think the AG and the Attorney General have been involved in that whole process. So, you know, it may be a good time to do something. So, I mean, we've got it on our radar screen right now. That's for sure. So, but with this and maybe other issues, do we have any other issues?
Real quick, I didn't come prepared tonight to answer that question, but just shoot you.
You did come prepared?
I didn't come prepared. A couple of
Thought you
things.
sent me a handout.
VRS, yeah, I was just going through these out. VRS localities would be great if we had parity with health insurance. The localities have access to the state health insurance benefit. Also, potentially taxation authority for school boards, just to throw that out there as consideration. And thirdly, something specific to Grayson County's payment in lieu, perhaps for prisons.
Okay.
And something specific to Grayson County, but I think the two things that perhaps could benefit us regionally is school board tax authority and.
You're for school board tax?
Well, just as a conversation.
That'd be a real conversation.
I think Jonathan makes a good point. I mean, school boards are notorious for using the board of supervisors in every county for a punching bag, and everything being blamed on the board of supervisors. And they'll pack your board meeting, as I've seen them do before, they'll bring kids in, sit in the floor, the whole room will be packed. We had to move one to the high school auditorium 3 years ago. And of course, we were fortunate, we were able to come up with a plan that deflated their balloon and all the air went out of the crowd, thank goodness. But we have a different school board superintendent now. The one we had then would stop at nothing. He would stoop very low to any kind of attack that would make everything look like it was the board of supervisors' fault and not anything to do with the school board. And I think we've thrown stuff like this around before.
Let me clarify real quick. We're not talking about carte blanche
No,
taxing authority. We're
absolutely
talking about
not.
perhaps a hybrid approach where LRE stays in place, the composite indexing stays additional funding above LRE, that there could be some level of tax authority where accountability is actually placed at the school board. And that's probably to beat around, be interested to be in a room, and hear that conversation take place. Just,
No, that's
I think
a solid point.
I just think it would be wonderful if suddenly a school board had to be accountable for the amount of money that they spend after they get it. Or they have to be responsible for the tax.
Perhaps if it's for capital, capital projects, or some approach to accountability with respect to education. Follow up with that. And then, of course, health insurance. I don't know where we're at with getting
Part of the
getting parity with like VRS.
getting
Access,
VRS?
no, access into the state
all state healthcare system.
I can actually speak to that because
Matt, tell us.
we carried that piece of legislation, and got as far as we've ever gotten with this bill. And it comes up every year, past 10 years, or probably even longer than that, where it's normally a VEA bill where they come up, they give us a bill basically saying that we need teachers on state health insurance. But this year, we came at it from both ends. It would have been all county employees and teachers. And that bill sailed out of the Senate. We got all other 39 senators as co-patrons of the bill. It flew through the Senate, but it got stopped right in the tracks in House Appropriations.
And my wife's a former public education teacher. But we're talking about locality, VACO supported legislation, not VEA supported legislation.
That's what our bill was, that's what I'm saying.
But we're talking about both VEA.
That's what our bill was both.
Yeah, we're not looking at supporting VEA. We're talking about purely counties, not counties and VEA. Because VEA may be what's keeping us out of that, opening that door.
It's gotta be both, because the way that.
We tried it with just VEA before. Can we not try it with just VACO?
I promise you, it's gotta be both, and the reason is that, first off, you're gonna lose a lot of support if we don't include teachers. And the second part of it is, and this was, talking with other legislators and county officials in VACO, the problem is when you buy health insurance, when you guys go out and do a bid process, if we took out just count employees out of that equation, you've got a smaller pool, and you're buying a very tiny health insurance plan for just teachers. The problem gets worse for those teachers, not better. And if you include them both in it, and you have the bargaining power of the state for both the county employees and the teachers, then you've got it on both sides. You're not excluding one set of your employees instead of the other. And again, you're coming back to that same problem where you're buying a really small plan for a small group of people, and it's going to be it's going to be more expensive, and it's probably not going to be better care. So that's why it has to be both, and that's again why we got pushback. In the past when it was just that VEA bill, why the counties pushed back, where they said, well, we're going to have to buy a smaller plan just for our county employees instead of buying a plan for both. If we do just county employees, the teachers are going to say the same thing. So it really does have to be an all-of-the-above approach. And even though that bill got defeated, we actually got a huge step. We got $250,000 in the state budget, and DHRM is currently, you just recently talked to DHRM, they're currently starting to do the study. And it's interesting how the budget language was set up. So not only are they going to be studying, doing an actuarial study, and basically see how viable it would be to add all these new people to state health insurance, to not only see how much it would be savings for y'all, but how much it would be savings or cost to the state. So they're going to look at it from both directions there. But the other thing, interestingly, that they're going to be studying is the local choice option, and how we can make that more enticing for more counties and localities to opt in. So they're kind of taking the dual approach, and actually, it's great for our area, and all of rural Virginia. It was actually written into the budget to make local choice, a local option, more enticing, specifically for rural counties. Because, I mean, you look at Fairfax, you look at Henrico, you look at some of the other big counties, they're probably not gonna opt in. They're big enough where they have enough bargaining power, where they're getting their own plan. They're probably not gonna want to opt in to state health insurance, even if they have that option. I mean, some of them are probably, you know, have just as good plans as state health insurance, but it's our rural localities that have that smaller pool where their health insurance is not up to par with the state health insurance. And that's why it's more the rural localities that are wanting us to do that. So that's going to be the interesting approach. And that study has to be done by October 31. And they're going to be reporting back to our office and reporting back to House Appropriations, Senate Finance, so we have enough time to draft another bill and put it in for next year. Because, again, the way that we looked at it was how, and I started off by saying that we've made more progress on this bill than we ever have because we actually got that study. So the studies that we had in the past were a couple years old. They weren't entirely complete. And they didn't look at all these different things in one comprehensive study. So it shows us that they're willing to work with us, and if they were willing to put in this $250,000 in this budget, and they were willing to set up this study for us, and they're getting we're going to have the results by October 31, so we have time to put in legislation. All of that tells me that they wanted this, so we have time to draft legislation, so we can get this done next year. And that, at least that's my glass half full look on it.
This is the first time that the state has actually supported the concept of education and local government officials all participating in the state quality health plan. It's the first time that they've endorsed it.
Did they could take a position?
Oh, we support that.
That was why Wythe was in our office all the time, because we were working so hard on this bill.
But now, I can't say that we would support it if just local government employees were not included. If it was just DEA.
Yeah, and and we see that now.
And they're likewise.
That's why we substituted the original bill and put in the bill that included both, because it's pretty obvious it wasn't gonna happen with just one or the other. It has to be both. It has to be everyone at the local level. Otherwise, again, you're either going to get one side or the other not happy with it, and plus you're not going to have that bargaining power.
I just add one thing, we really appreciate working with Senator Chaffin's office, because they did make that change, like, because we couldn't support it without the teachers. That would be a local option on both, otherwise we could have a smaller pool, more cost for counties. So they made it a great bill, and like you said, that last hurdle is the last hurdle is the state employees are worried about their costs going up, so that they need participation by localities in this study. We're working with DHRM, and we'll be sending out that information when we get it. So make sure when you get that, you reply on your healthcare costs and all the different questions they're going to have to give us the information to say, hey, state, you can take this on without increasing your costs, because that's the hurdle. The appropriators want to be sure of that.
All right, let me move around the room real quick. Washington County.
We got, in the future, our emergency services. I'm sure every county in here has issues with that because ours is volunteer. The town of Abington has paid. Everything we got is volunteer. Equipment issues, not getting the volunteers and stuff. I've sat here and listened to y'all talk about a meals tax and a lodging tax. And that's one of the options I've been wondering about, is going with a meal tax and designated straight for emergency services. So anything that we could do to help us in the counties to do something to help us get that tax, I think would be beneficial, because in 10 or 15 years, I see all kinds of problems just in our county because we're not getting the volunteers we used to.
Are we getting that? We got that down?
Yeah, and you know, that's something, Wayne, that we looked at a couple
couple sessions ago was the volunteer EMS and EMT training hours.
Yes.
And if that was in fact a deterrent to the number of volunteers that you could get.
I definitely think it is. It's been a big issue down there. We've been working on it. And you're getting back to another part of it. Some of the OSHA requirements, they're kind of gray areas on physicals, mass fit test, all kinds of issues like that. And I'm sure every county in the state and cities all confronted with that. It's hard for us to, I think it's something we need to look at.
Pulaski County?
Ditto.
Ditto for all?
There's actually one thing I'd like to add on those volunteer firefighters. Is we ran into this issue in Lebanon, actually, and so almost all of our counties and localities have volunteer firefighters and EMS. And in Lebanon, they had a firefighter that got hurt while on the line of duty, and they had a workers' comp insurance policy, but the town council in Lebanon never adopted a resolution recognizing them as employees for workers' comp. So when they went to the workers' comp and tried to cash in on their policy for the person that got hurt, they got denied because they weren't recognized as employees. So if you guys don't have a resolution that recognizes your firefighters as employees, you need to, especially if you have a workers' comp policy. Otherwise, they will not be able to use that workers' comp policy.
For those of you who have VACO insurance, be sure and make a call, make sure that you are covered correctly. I don't want to tell you to sign up your volunteers as employees, but I think you need to check with your insurance coverage.
Yeah, they had an existing policy, but they didn't know that they had to do that resolution, and so they weren't able to use their policy.
But for those of us who are in the counties and have VACO insurance,
Yeah.
they also have workers' comp
Okay.
as a part of that. So I mean, that's
That's a July 1st meeting.
oh, you're our board member up back here. Well, yeah, sorry, Slip.
It's July the 1st of this year, and you should be signed up for that. VACO Insurance has a volunteer coverage for all firefighters and volunteer EMS people. That's at a very reasonable cost that gets by this, I guess, private carrier resolution.
Okay, well, that's good. I didn't know that, but we ran into that issue with our town and just wanted to make sure no one else got it.
But that's because it's the bill, so you wouldn't.
But now, please refer your town to the VACO insurance. We'd be happy to talk about it.
We cover towns,
Yes, we do.
and cities.
All right, we haven't heard from our city here. Bristol.
Well, as a city, we are able to implement the cigarette tax, so we do have a cigarette tax, but we see a lot of the vapors and e-cigarette stores popping up and feel like we should have the ability to tax the e-cigarette as well, and certainly feel like there should be more regulations on that.
So you would be with us, I guess, as one city, you would be all in favor of counties having equal taxing authority as the cities. I put her on the spot. Thank you. That's what you get when you come to the VACO. Do we have any other county issues that we need to, Wythe County, I forgot about Wythe.
Ditto everything.
Okay.
The cigarette tax and equal taxation is our biggest thing. And, you know, the money to the schools, I mean, the state keeps cutting back every year. Like the raises, yes, they give the teachers 1.5%, county sheriff's department. But there's more employees in the county than that. I mean, there's more employees at the school.
The only fund, SOQ fund.
Yeah, just SOQ fund. You know, and you just can't get just one section a raise. We have to give everybody a raise. And they have to understand that just that little pot of money they give extra, which don't cover enough. doesn't
Kind of
cover.
like when they fund certain level deputies, constitutional officers, not all the constitutional officers.
So what we're asking for is, we're asking for the state to recognize those support positions that are not part of the SOQ and the non-personal, non-personnel costs that we have in delivering education services, K-12 education
I
services.
think it's just, on our
As far as state funding.
I think our, especially they do for constitutional offices, when they'll say, we're gonna give the treasurer's office a certain percentage, and then the clerks get a certain percentage, and then the county attorneys get a certain percentage. I think when those types of languages come down, it throws a lot of, because we're sitting there at the end of the day, we all work in local offices together, and so counties end up having to fund, or say we're only gonna fund common sense. But I would just add for Blaine County, and I want to thank, since we have representatives from Senator Kane and Michelle as well, with Congressman Griffith, a third of the Blaine County is national forest or federal lands, so we live quite a bit off of payment in lieu of tax funding and safe rural schools funding, so I think I've reached out to both of them on that. I want to thank them for their help, but anything we can do on the federal side too, to improve funding for schools, and, because that's a taxable property that we don't have, and it seems like our national forest properties grow every year, as more and more people sell property to the federal government, so to us, as we look at that limited taxable real estate, we lose real estate that's taxable every year.
Now, is your PILT, is it dealing with forest, with national
Yes.
forest, national forest?
But there was no.
What about prisoners, prison funding? Do you have?
Our payment in lieu, we did see the payment in lieu of tax fund, and we get secure rural schools fund. But PILT funding was cut out in FY15, and so we went to getting from $400,000 a year to this year $11,000. So quite a bit expensive.
Is the state, you have to refresh my memory on PILT, as far as state funding. I know at one time there was some PILT funding for counties who had prisons in there.
That's what Jonathan was talking
Yeah,
about.
that's what you were talking about.
That's what I was
But I mean, has that been cut out too?
It's not easy to access. I think it even requires legislation to access it. You've got to demonstrate it, it's a certain pie, and you've got to try and carve out a piece of the pre-existing pie.
I swear, I don't think there's any money in the state budget for that, any general funds.
There may not be.
So we're in the same boat with state penitentiary.
Yeah, okay.
So
We were in a unique situation. We're the last state facility to open up. So we actually got to see what our expenses were before a prison and what our expenses are after a prison. And we can use the court's office as just the example. The number of, the volume of mail and processing that comes through the prison that goes to the judge, it's going to, it almost requires a full-time person just to process all that paperwork from the prison. We don't have, of course, the funding to increase staff on our fire and rescue services, on our law enforcement service, for sheriff's department, processing papers, etc. It's a pretty large expense that we incur. It's demonstrable. We can show and quantify that.
Okay. I think you can also thank probably Senator Carrico for helping get that prison open.
We're not complaining, and that's what we haven't beat a big
That
drum
was
about.
on hold
Absolutely.
for several years.
We're very fortunate to have it open.
It was a building without anyone in it. That's right. Here.
I just want to piggyback on that payment in lieu of taxes issue. You all have been great about copying us on your letters to delegation. Senator Kane and Morgan Griffith's office have been very supportive and signed on the letters on that. National Association of Counties, that's one of their big lobbying priorities. Most of the western states, that's their top county priority, so but they need folks in the east weighing in Congress, so you guys and others in this region have been helpful to get our delegation on board with that. They did just repass that secure rural schools for forest counties. So.
And we keep a close eye in our office.
And I want to thank, because I mean, Senator Kane's office, Congressman Griffith's office, Senator Warner's office, they all do a great job of letting me know what's going on, so we have a pretty good line of communication.
Did I miss anyone? Everybody get a chance to weigh in? What's that?
You don't get one go back.
Wanna go back?
You don't get, There's something that I just like to bring up, it's not statewide, it's really localized, but it affects most of the localities that's here. That's our training centers. And all of them around, each county that's here is affected in some way or another with the proposal to eliminate or close or do those things. And Doug Campbell worked really hard with us, he and,
So make sure you're talking about the mental health.
yes, mental health training centers. And it's going to be devastating to the families. Those that are left in those, the residents that are remaining in those facilities are not nearly as mobile, if that's the right word, as what maybe the Department of Health says they are in a lot of cases. But it's, next year, if we can find a way to get those dollars put in there, we need to look at something for that group of citizens. And it's gonna have a really negative impact on the families, regardless of what we do. But any help that we can get, it isn't something that we could probably go to Waco as a statewide thing, although they are all across the country. But I think it's something that we need to be working on, and the localities need to be working with their delegates to try to do something to help that situation next year.
That's a huge issue that is a very costly issue.
It is.
Thank you.
I guess if I may, that's really an issue, the consent order that the state of Virginia signed with the U.S. government is the driver of that. So it's got to be attacked from the congressional level to get that consent order rescinded.
And I think that can be done. I think the biggest thing is that the state of Virginia is going to have to determine that they want to put general fund dollars back into those facilities to bring them up, because right now they're deteriorating, those facilities. And that's part of the reason that they're closing. It's just going to take too much money. They feel it's going to take too much money to go back in and try to get these things up to where they need to be, standard-wise. That's what the federal government says. So it's a tough issue, it really is. It's a general fund issue. Use a general fund issue, state general fund issue. So, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and staying here the entire time. It's almost 2 hours. I really want to thank Tim, for our regional director, for hosting us here tonight. Shalel, your staff, for making all this happen. This is a great room. And so you've got a smart board over here. So it's got some nice, fantastic facility. Thank Nationwide for providing and being a sponsor tonight for the cookies and water. Please help yourself with some cookies before you leave. If you want to take some for your kids, please. Please. Thank you, Sal. Thank you all.